We're going to discuss safety at the fire emergency, which is chapter 5 in your book. Just like all previous chapters, you should have read the chapter first and then view this PowerPoint presentation reviewing your book as we go along. So the learning objectives. List the 3 incident priorities. Be able to explain the relationship between the 3 incident priorities and their relationship to health and safety. Discuss in general terms the hazards faced by responders to fire incidents. List the components of personal protective equipment used for fire incidents, and discuss the need for and the components of an effective accountability system. Discuss the types of and the relationship between the incident management system and the health and safety of the first responder. Describe the concept of and the need for fireground air management. Define the need for and the uses of rapid intervention teams, and discuss the components of an incident rehabilitation. So as an introduction, the goal here is that you understand incident priorities and where an incident commander makes those priorities and their relationship with operations and the hazard to design programs and procedures to reduce injury, which is the goal of all safety programs. The safety and health program manager must have a good knowledge of the hazards faced at fires and procedures that will ensure safer operations, and then develop policies and procedures to protect the personnel. And we will see this in life safety initiatives 1, 2, 3, and 4, which will have a direct or indirect relationship to the safety at the fire emergency. So the priorities in safety. Life safety is always the number one priority. Life safety is a group of activities that ensures that the threat of injury or death to civilians and emergency personnel is reduced to the absolute minimum. So that's our goal. And if you ask anybody, what is the primary goal at a fire, they always say life safety. Sometimes they forget, though, that life safety also involves the firefighters. We do risk our lives a lot of times to rescue people, and that's what we're there for. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to risk our personnel's lives if there is no lives to be saved. And that's the balancing act of the incident commander as well as the safety officer. Incident stabilization is a group of activities required to stop additional damage or danger. And this is what we do when we try to extinguish the fire. Property conservation is the group of activities called salvage or stopping the loss. After we determine that there is no more life safety hazard, then one of the things we have to think about is property conservation. Can we save part of their property? Because that's what we're there for. After saving lives, we're saving them for property. And where I can think of a fire that I went to when I was a captain is we had a fire in a plating company. And the whole plating company was fully involved in fire because they had quite a few bad chemicals. What the incident commander did is he assigned all those first-in companies, instead of fighting the fire, he assigned them to go inside the office, which is the only part that wasn't burning, and pull out all of the files. Well, what this does is that this now allows that business owner to make sure that he or she's paid for the work they've already done, and maybe to get their business up and going. So sometimes you may not even have to attack the fire. You may, if you know there's no life loss, maybe start protecting the property. Hazards faced by first responders. In structure fires, you have the construction. You have to be aware of the different types of constructions in the different type of neighborhood. For instance, in the city that I worked for, Pasadena, most of our construction was ordinary construction. It had been there for many years, and we didn't have much lightweight construction. If you go down to some of the newer cities or the newer places that have tracks, they build all that construction out of lightweight building materials. You have to realize that it is going to be a different tactic and strategy because the fire behavior is going to be different. You're going to have either more or less time to be on that roof. In Pasadena, we have more time because most of the construction is ordinary construction, whereas if you're in Orange County or places that have newer property, then you may not have that much time. And again, the fire behavior is going to be based on that. We go on quite a few transportation fires, especially if you have a freeway running through your town, you'll go on quite a few. And that's both auto and trucks. Several of the fires that I've been on the freeway have been semi-trucks and their tractors, and they are usually well involved in fire when we get there. Also, you might have a train that runs through there. You might have aircraft, whether you have an airport or we've had aircraft crash in Pasadena and there's no aircraft near there. And then if you're near the waterway, you might have ships. And there's always outside structure fires. There's sheds, there could be barns in the rural areas, there could be just outbuildings that have outside structure fires. And wildfires. What we have, especially in California and many other places on West Coast and up to like the Colorado area, is you have quite a few homes that are built in this brush where it changes your whole firefighter strategy. Real important. This is the 10 standard firefighting orders. What you will find is if there is a death on a wildland incident, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, I'm going to guess about 90%, one of these orders has been violated. And what you'll find is that we kill big groups of firefighters and they're doing the same thing where we've killed the same groups before. They put themselves in a position that they can't follow these 10 standard firefighting orders. So let's look at these. Real important, keep informed on the fire, weather conditions, and forecast. Now you have to be informed on the fire, where it's going, and what direction it's going. Now, yes, we may not be able to see the whole fire. We may not be able to see any of it, but you need to listen to the radio. You need to have the helicopters, which we'll always have, or planes, tell you what the fire is doing. You need to check your weather forecast every day, whether you're going to have a wildland fire or not. There's been several fires where a cold front came in and changed the conditions and blew up the fire and pushed it in directions that it wasn't going before. So you need to know what the weather conditions are, and you need to know what the forecast is. So like I just said earlier, you need to know what the fire is doing at all times, and then base your actions on the current and expected behavior of the fire. So if you're going to get ahead of the fire, you need to know what it's doing. And if you don't know what it's doing, you shouldn't get ahead of the fire and we'll start attacking from the flanks. But you have to know what the current actions are and where do we expect it to burn. Now, after the initial response, we start having these campaign fires. There is a briefing twice a day, and they will have a weather specialist give you a briefing on the expected weather, and they'll have a fire behavior specialist tell you where they think the fire is going to go. All the captains should be at that meeting, as well as any battalion chiefs, anybody that's going to be on this fire. Regardless where you are, you must have an escape route for everybody. That includes your crew, that includes any civilians that might be near you. You need to know if everything goes wrong, that how are we going to be safe? You must make those decisions known to everybody that's on your crew. They must know that if something goes wrong, how are we going to get out of here? You must be alert at all times, even if you think the fire is miles away, because these fires can move really fast. You need to keep calm, you need to think clearly, and then act decisively. And again, a lot of this comes with experience. You need to make sure that you can maintain communication with your crew, your supervisor, and adjoining forces. The crew must be able to talk to each other, and hopefully everybody there has a radio on that crew. The supervisor of the engine company should be able to communicate with the crew and whoever they report to above them. And then if you've got engine companies or hand crews or dozers that are working near you, you must be able to communicate with them. What happens occasionally is that we have crews in one area and someone lights a backfire behind them and they don't know about it, and then all of a sudden now this fire is running at them and they have to take defensive action. You want to make sure you give clear instructions and make sure that they're understood by everybody. Supervisors, captains must maintain control of their crews at all times. Don't let people go wandering out. That's what happens a lot of times. You'll see these incidents, all of a sudden a crew wants to go look or do something. Well, they don't think how fast this fire can move, and this is what will cause them to be overrun by fire. And always, always fight the fire aggressively, but you must provide for safety first. We don't want to stand back and always let it come right at us, but you want to try to fight aggressively. But don't go places. We don't want to go into the unburned. You need to have what we say always is 1 foot in the black, so that there is burned material on one side of you and unburned fuel on the other. So personal protective equipment. This is really important. Firefighters need to make sure that they have all their personal protective equipment. They need to make sure that they can put it on in a reasonable amount of time. Like you should be able to put on all your PPE in under a minute and your breathing apparatus donned and masked up under a minute. If you can't do that, then you're going to have a delay in attacking the fire or rescuing someone. Good personal protective equipment, it minimizes exposure at the fire scene. It makes sense. It addresses the priority of life safety because it's going to protect our rescuers. If something should go wrong, such as a flashover or backdraft, this will help protect them. There's PPE for structure and vehicle fires, which is essentially the same. Most departments don't wear anything different. Some departments have thought about trying to go to the wildland clothing for vehicle fires, but it just doesn't give you the protection. You should be dressed the same for both. Wildland firefighter has a different PPE design. It's more lighter weight. And there's some talk, especially here in the Los Angeles County area, that rather than double layering with a uniform pants, uniform shirt, or really a uniform t-shirt, because you should have a long sleeve t-shirt on that you're wearing, and you don't want to put your uniform shirt on underneath your wildland PPE. So what most departments do is they wear their fire retardant pants, they wear their cotton long sleeve t-shirt, and then they have their wildland or brush clothing on over that. Well, what I was starting to say is that many departments, and now really a few departments right now, are looking at going to just a single layer of pants with the t-shirt and a brush jacket. This is what the Federal Forest Service does. We do it different in the fire service, and there's some feeling out there that not wearing double layer in the pants will protect your firefighters equally, but won't make them overheated. So when we discuss PPE, it can be divided into 3 areas: designing and purchasing, use, and care and maintenance. So design and purchase. They're commonly expected components, typically going to follow what NFPA says. Now departments can add extra things on there if they want. One of the things that you'll see now is that the turnout pants, some people call them bunker pants, are now starting, some of them you can also get a class 2 harness built into there for firefighter rescue. So that would be something a department might want to add. With NFPA, anytime you would buy personal protective equipment, you would want to stress and you want to mandate that it meets NFPA. You would not want to allow the manufacturer or the retailer to sell you anything that does not meet it. Now, some people they choose to have a different color of turnouts. Some people choose to have a different material, and there's a couple out there. So that would be each department's specifications. But again, you must mandate that it meets NFPA. You should have SOPs or SOGs in place. And this should really not be an SOP, it should be a policy in my mind. It should be mandated that firefighters what they should wear for each type of incident and when they can take it off. And most time it's up to the incident commander and or individual captain when they can take off, say, a turnout coat and put on a wildland jacket for overhaul and so on. You should mandate that SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, be used and have procedures on when you can use it and when you can't. There's some departments that will have someone come in with a air monitor, and when the parts per million of carbon monoxide and any potential hazardous fumes, when it gets to a level, then they'll allow their personnel to take it off, but they actually use a monitor. I feel you can never leave it on too long. Yes, it's hot, yes, you can't see, but you don't know what you're breathing in these structure fires. And care and maintenance. NFPA provides standards, you should follow them. The manufacturers their standards will be based on NFPA. They're not going against anything there. And so it has to do with washing. Typically you take your turnouts apart, wash the outer coats together, wash the liners together. Then usually you have to, unless you have a specific dryer for them, you have to dry them out of the sun. Again, your department should have a policy on this so that everybody knows how to maintain it. And the policy should say that after a working structure fire that they are sent in for cleaning. It isn't like the old days when we wore our turnouts and we never washed them. You know, it was a sign of macho that, hey, I got the dirtiest turnouts, and everybody likes it. I still do. But you got to realize that all this material that we have on there is off-gassing at all times. And most departments now have a policy, not an SOP, not an SOG. They have a policy that you cannot wear turnouts and turnout boots into the living area. Again, it used to be that you had your turnout boots and pants. Well, the only time you wore them was at night, but you had them next to your bed and you jumped in them. Well, nowadays, most departments do not allow this. They're kept next to the rig, and personnel will put them on when they go to structures. One thing I wanted to really stress is if you look at the picture here I have on the slide, my crew and I were making an interior attack to an attic, and we were at the very top of that stairs there when the whole fire flashed over and all this burning material dropped on us. Well, it threw me down the bottom of the stairs, but covered my 2 firefighters in burning material. The only reason that we sustained no injuries at all, was because we all had on our protective equipment. So this saved our lives that night. I have no doubt, and I'm a true believer that you must have your equipment on, and you must have it all buttoned up and ready to go. So when we talk about personal protective equipment or PPE for structure fires, there's obviously an approved fire helmet. The fire helmet must meet ANSI and it must meet NFPA. Protective eye protection. Now, Your book says shield. Most fire departments in California don't use shields. We use goggles or some type of eye protection. East Coast, I believe, uses quite a few shields. I don't like shields because I think something can get up under your shield and still strike you in the face. So I believe in goggles, but it's department specific. Flame resistant hood. This is one of the greatest things that was ever introduced to the fire service. Now you might hear some old timers say, oh, you know what, we shouldn't be wearing hoods because we can't feel the heat. Well, I'm telling you, you can always feel the heat. And their statement they'll say is, yeah, we used to use our ears, and when the ears started to blister, then we knew it was time to get out. Well, if your ears are blistering, you're already too far inside the fire. And we used to go too far. And I can tell you personally, you can feel the heat on your hood. You can feel the heat if you put your hand up, and you'll feel it even through your gloves. Turnout coat, real important, shouldn't have any holes, should be cleaned, and should be checked on a regular basis. Turnout pants, same thing. Firefighting gloves. Now it's important that you use approved firefighting gloves, not leather gloves. And sometimes you'll see, crews that go to the roof, they want to wear leather gloves because it's easier to operate the saws and things. That's all nice and fine until you fall through the roof. And they've had firefighters that have fallen through the roof into the fire, and they've been hurt and they've been burned, but the reason that they're alive is because they had on approved equipment. Firefighting boots is typically your turnout boots, or if your department allows you, you can wear your station boots. What's really important though is you need to make sure that those station boots meet NFPA for structure firefighting. Or if you're going to use them for wildland, they must meet for wildland. Some of the newer station boots don't have that type of protection and can melt in a fire. So you need to make sure you must have a policy on what you can or can't use. Personal alert safety system, also called a PASS, real important. Most breathing apparatus should already have these built in unless you're using something really old. But nowadays, when you turn your breathing apparatus on, the minute you turn it on, not only do you have alarms built in for if you're low on air, but your PASS is going to notify anybody if you're stationary for a certain period. So we can find those down firefighters. And then finally, self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. One of the most important tools we have. You should always check that every day. You should always make sure that that bottle is completely full, because maybe your department allows it to go down to, we'll say on a 4,500 PSI allows it to go down to 4,000. Well, I always wanted 4,500 so that I have more time inside the structure to fight the fire without running out of air. We're going to switch now to incident management system. And there's a typical incident management system structure that was developed in California, and it was based after we had the Bel Air fire. It's pretty much used nationwide now with NIMS, the National Incident Management System, and with most fire departments. You'll see some departments have a little bit different format. They may call a couple positions something different, but it's all based the same. And there's two portions. There's command staff, and command staff includes the information officer, the safety officer, liaison, and then general staff, operations, finance, logistics, and planning. So the incident commander, it says command. The three people we said that they work directly for the incident commander. So you have the incident safety officer. This person works for the incident commander. The incident commander will give the safety officer instructions. This is what I want. This is what I want you to watch out for, as well as the safety officer will look for things that can cause firefighters to be hurt, injured, or killed. Liaison's important, and this person, their job is that they will work with anybody that's non-fire department. So it may be the police department, it may be water and power, it may be the Red Cross, it may be anybody else that could be part of your system that may come in to assist you. That's who arranges all this thing. If you're going to be assigned as a liaison, you should have all those numbers ahead of time. And then the information officer, or commonly referred to as PIO, Public Information Officer. This person works directly for the incident commander. This job's important on major incidents, because if you don't have this person, they're always going to try to be bugging the incident commander as they're trying to run the incident. And then the general staff is finance, logistics, planning, and op. But for most instances, we will only have an operations officer. And this person's in charge of running the fire. They report directly to the incident commander, but the incident commander does not direct companies. It's operations that would do that. On major incidents, especially major wildland fires, you also have planning, logistics, and finance. Now planning, they're going to plan for the next operational period. So their job is to plan ahead, think where this fire is going, and what resources we're going to need for this. So it's a really important job. It takes a lot of work. Logistics, this is the person that's going to bring you anything that you need to properly operate. And the best example, again, is a wildland incident where you need to bring in fuel tenders, you need to bring in companies that provide food, toilets, showers, and all the replacement equipment that they're going to need, because we're going to break stuff. And remember that typically we're either working 12 hours or 24-hour shifts. And when these people come off the line, you need to give them everything they need, including fuel for their apparatus and helicopters. And then finance, once we start getting into these incidents, we're going to have to start paying for all this stuff. And so finances, their job is to track everything that everybody's spending, how many hours everybody's working, and who's working from where they're from. So again, when you have the big incidents, you need all of these. You should have an air management policy. People need to understand the average air consumption. You need to understand how much you will use in a fire. Do you go through air fast? Do you go through air slow? And there should be a policy in your department when you will exit the building. And it may be when the alarm goes off, or it may be sooner. And again, we typically, if it's a large structure fire, we want to leave the hazard area before the alarm goes off, because we may not find our way out. And then you should always have enough air for unplanned events. And that's kind of like what I just said there. If there's a possibility that you might get lost, or also need to go try to help else out, then you need to have enough air for that. Critical elements of the incident management system of the safety program. So for your safety officer, you need to be prepared for this incident to grow. Some incidents are going to get bigger, if we call a second alarm. Can you handle that whole second alarm with one safety officer? Probably not. So be prepared to grow, get some help. Tell the incident commander, if you call that second, I need to get some people to help me. Be adaptable. Every incident is different. You need to be able to adaptable. Now your book says provide for visual recognition. I don't really agree with that, because we can't always see everybody inside the structure. So I want to know where they're at, but I'm not sure that we can always have a visual recognition of them. We need to give PARs at a regular basis. Most departments have a time frame. For Pasadena, it was every 20 minutes, and our dispatchers kept track of for all the Verdugo cities, and every 20 minutes they would tell you that they'd give you that, okay, you've been working for 20 minutes. And what you should do as the incident commander is do a PAR. That's a personnel accountability report. And so what you do is you call each company, what's the status of your crews? Can you account for everybody at that time? Personnel must be checked into the system. What does that mean? We need to know that they're in there. If I know that engine company 1's inside, I'm going to call their captain and I'll say, engine 1 IC, give me a PAR. And they'll say, engine 1, all crews are accountable for. But I have to know that they're in the structure or they're in the incident, and I have to be able to keep track of them. Ideally, we provide for points of entry. Now, this isn't always easy to do, and sometimes we can't do it, but you need to know who's working. So what this means for that incident commander, I always, if I'm going to have a working structure, I want to get somebody there that can keep track of my personnel. That's their only job, is where they're at, draw a map out, and keep track of them. When we get to Rick, we'll talk about Rick will do that a little bit. There's several different systems out there where when crews come off, they take a magnet off or they take a tag off and they leave it. I'm not sure any of them work really well. And again, everybody must know the objectives of the system. What is our objective? How are we going to make sure we have everybody accounted for? So why do we have rapid intervention companies or rapid intervention groups? Well, we have these for in case firefighters go down. Their main job, and you can see a RIC company right there at a fire that I had, their main job is in case firefighters go down. They can sometimes, if they're ready to go, they can help with other assignments like putting a ladder up. But their main goal is they need to know where everybody's at. This captain needs to know who's working in there. They must have their equipment, understand that they have to be ready for saving other firefighters. So what RIC equipment do we carry? And you can see some of it there. Most departments have a specified compartment with specified equipment. They should have an extra SCBA. You can see that that's the middle one on the ground. It's an SCBA that we can hook into a firefighter, and that's its only function. It's kept on the apparatus just for that. You should have a search rope. You should have forcible entry hand tools and mechanical forcible entry tools. If I need to get in there, how can I get in there? You should have a hose line available to you. You should, if you need ladders, you should have a ladder. You should always have a thermal imager camera or a TIC, and you see that's in the captain's right hand there. He has it ready. The captain's standing back. His crew is ready. They all have flashlights on them. And what you can see at this fire here, which was just a really small residential fire, the house was boarded up. There was just a gate to the left. Well, this company came in. They got their equipment out. They did a 360 of the structure. They felt there wasn't enough access, so they tore down the gate right there in the front. And again, that was just for firefighters to get out. They put up an additional ladder for firefighters, and they took off some of the boarded up windows so that if we needed to, people can get out when things go wrong. This is a really good example of a RIC company, what they should and are capable of doing. For rehab, you need to think about, is it cold out? Is it hot out? And our objectives are to get our firefighters back to normal, either whether they were cold or hot. We should have their vitals taken when they come to rehab. Make sure that they drink water. We don't want them to be drinking caffeinated drinks or these energy drinks. They should only be resting right there. We may have fans set up if it's a really hot day, and we may have heaters set up if it's a really cold day. Rehab, this whole procedure needs to be done ahead of time. You can't be thinking about this after the incident has occurred. And these are some heat stress indexes that you can use, and wind chill. So in summary, occupational priorities are life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. And remember that life safety includes the firefighters. It's everybody working the scene. Must have a safety program to decrease exposure to hazards. And again, those are policies that will say, hey, this is when you will wear breathing apparatus, this is when you won't. You must have a safety officer or officers who are accountable for and responsible for the incident scene safety. Should have a practical system that accounts for personnel and their equipment and where everybody's at. And responders and incident commanders have the responsibility to understand the concepts of error management.